What's going on, family? This is Scrapbook Boxing Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series, volume number 2 of Boxing Talk with Scrapbook. That's when I get involved with some contemporary fighters that deserve my conversation, and there's no other fighter that I can think of outside of Pernell Whitaker and Meldrick Taylor, Julio Cesar Chavez, just to name a few, and I already took care of Ronald Winky Wright and Vernon Forrest. But right now we're looking at the real deal Evander Holyfield. Born October 19, 1962 in Altamont, Alabama, he stood 6 foot and 2.5 inches, weighed 176 to 221 pounds, and was managed by Ken Sanders, Shelly Finkel, and Jen Thomas. Now, the trainers that he had were Hall of Fame quality trainers, such as Lou Duva. Lou Duva has been involved with some of the best fighters of modern time, such as Meldrick Taylor, Pernell Whitaker, Johnny Bump City Bumpers, Rocky Lockridge, Tyrell Briggs, Mark Breland, just to name a few. I mean, some of the great fighters of modern time. Lou Duva has been involved with the main event training camp, and he had a dynamic trainer helping him out. And of course, we did a bio on Georgie Benton. If you don't know much about Georgie Benton, type in Georgie Benton, Scrapbook Boxing, you'll learn a lot about Georgie Benton. I'm going to go into him a little deeper because I couldn't get too far into Georgie Benton at that particular time, but I had to straighten something out with his last name. But Georgie Benton was part of that training camp, and he was involved with some of those great fighters. But Evander Holyfield, I'll tell you, he also had Don Turner. Don Turner was a fascinating trainer, was an old school trainer, had old school thoughts. He would be involved with Ronnie Shields. Ronnie Shields is a fascinating amateur fighter. In 1973, he actually prevented Thomas Hearns from getting into the Nationals. He trained Vernon Forrest, and he's in there right now with the Charlo brothers. So right now, you're looking at one of the fascinating crew of trainers that Evander Holyfield was involved with. Now, here's some of the great fighters that he was actually involved with. Mike Tyson fought him 2 times. Riddick Bowe fought him 3 times. Larry Holmes, legendary Larry Holmes. George Foreman, legendary. These are all lineal and unified champions. Michael Moore fought him twice. Michael Moore was a WBO light heavyweight champion and a unified heavyweight champion. John Ruiz, who was a heavyweight champion, fought him 3 times. Lennox the Lion Lewis fought him a few times. Nassim Rodman. I mean, these are fascinating quality names. Dwight Muhammad Qawi, July 12, 1986. He would fight him in Atlanta, his hometown, and he would defeat him in 15 rounds. That was a war. And he would win the WBA Cruiserweight Championship of the world. He would knock out Ozzy Ocasio and Henry Tillman. Henry Tillman gave Mike Tyson a whale of a time and prevented him from going into the 1984 Olympic Games in Los Angeles. So those are spectacular victories for Evander Holyfield. But then he would collect another belt, fighting Ricky Parkey on May 15th for the IBF Cruiserweight Championship, and then get in there with Carlos Sugar de Leon and win the WBC and become unified, undisputed Cruiserweight Champion of the world. Fascinating. 1989. He would face Michael Doakes on March 11th of that year and win the WBC Intercontinental Heavyweight Championship of the world. And that was fight of the year, fight of the decade. Michael Dynamite Doakes was an unbelievable 2-fisted fighter, had one of the fastest hands outside of Floyd Patterson in the heavyweight division. And that fight right there is the epitome of what boxing is all about. You had 2 hungry fighters that went in to get a world title. And they went against each other, and they actually fought it out. And rest in peace to Michael Doakes, but Michael Doakes was a dynamic fighter. Salute to Michael Doakes. That fight took place March 11th, 1989. July 15th, 1989, he would face Jose Adelan Rodriguez. Now, Adelan Rodriguez would face George Foreman and be knocked out with a polarizing left hook. But before he would get that opportunity to be knocked out by George Foreman, he would face Evander Real Deal Holyfield in Las Vegas, Nevada. And that was for a title defense of the WBC Intercontinental America's Championship that he would win from Michael Doakes on March 11th, 1989. November 4th, I was at that fight in Atlantic City. He would face Alex the Destroyer Stewart. Now, I knew Alex Destroyer Stewart personally. He used to train in Gleason's Gym in Brooklyn, New York on 45 Front Street. And Alex the Destroyer Stewart was from Jamaica. He was a fascinating heavyweight. He had a record at that time of 24-0 with 24 knockouts. He was beating everybody. But when he got in there with Evander Holyfield, he was going for Evander Holyfield's WBC Continental America's Heavyweight Championship, and he came up short because Evander Holyfield would defeat him. And that showed me a lot about what Evander Holyfield had to offer. I already thought that he would beat Mike Tyson, but that solidified my thoughts on his engagement with Mike Tyson. 1990, he would face a fighter by the name of Lorenzo Kennedy. That was a Mike Tyson opponent on March 25th of that year, 1990. This would be in Corpus Christi, Texas, and that would be a 3-round exhibition. He was tuning himself up for the event coming up on June 1st, 1990 against Sherman McDouglas. I knew him as well. He was in Gleason's gym training around with some of the fighters such as Ronaldo Snipes and others. But they fought Atlantic City, New Jersey, and he was a technical knockout in 4 rounds. Evander Holyfield cut his lip, so he was out for a little bit, but in 1991 he would get back in there and face Big George Foreman. Big George Foreman was a fascinating fighter. But before he would get to that fight, October 25th, 1990, he would face James Buster Douglas. Douglas had upstated the world when he knocked out Mike Tyson in 1990. And that's still hard to believe today, although I know Buster Douglas was a very good athlete. He was a basketball player, and his father, Bill Douglas, was also an athlete. So he had the ability, he just didn't have the heart, so you never know what Buster Douglas would show up. But I'll tell you, that was some fight, and Evander Holyfield would knock out Buster Douglas in the 3rd round. That was for the WBC, WBA, IBF, and the CBZ lineal heavyweight championships of the world. So salute to Evander Holyfield for pulling off that accomplishment. He was a cruiserweight, and before that he was a light heavyweight, and he came up there and did what he did with these heavyweights. You have to commend him for that. But back to Big George Foreman, April 19th, 1991, he would face him for the WBC, WBA, IBF, and the CBZ lineal heavyweight championship of the world, and he would go the distance with George Foreman, defeating him in 12 rounds, and that would break George Foreman's victory. Now, George Foreman did go the distance with Bigfoot Martin, so that broke his knockout streak, but it broke his victory for coming back, you know, in his new form of a fighter of Big George Foreman, because George Foreman was undefeated in his 2nd career coming back with Evander Holyfield. So Evander Holyfield, I'll tell you, he had the goods. He would face Burt Cooper, November 23rd, 1991, in his hometown, Atlanta. And he would throw some beautiful uppercut and left hook combinations, but before that, he would get hurt himself by Burt Cooper. Burt Cooper was a very good fighter. They thought he would be another Mike Tyson. That turned out not to be the case when he would face Carl the Truth Williams in Atlantic City. I was at that fight. And he broke Carl Williams' eardrum in that particular fight. But actually, Carl the Truth Williams broke Burt Cooper's eardrum in that fight. And I'll tell you, that was some fight as well. That was in Atlantic City. But Burt Cooper was a very, very good fighter. You never knew what Burt Cooper would show up. The only problem with Burt Cooper was he was not disciplined. But he had Joe Frazier in there in his corner, and they named him Smoking, as they did Smoking Joe Frazier. So he was smoking Burt Cooper. And that was for the WBA, the IBF, and the CBZ, lineal heavyweight championship of the world. 1992, he would face Larry Holmes, the Eastern Assassin, for the WBC, WBA, IBF, and the CBZ heavyweight championship of the world. And he would defeat him in 12 rounds. Fascinating. At the end of that round, at the end of the fight actually, Larry Holmes would go back and vomit up all the water that he was trying to hide himself, because that's the type of quality of Evander Holyfield was as a fighter. He put a lot of pressure on you, and he disturbed the digestive system of Larry Holmes. Now in 1993, June 26th, he would face Alex the Destroyer Stewart in Atlantic City and would defeat him in 12 rounds. Alex Stewart was 24-0 with 24 knockouts at that particular time. I'm pretty sure it was 24. It wasn't 26-0. It was 24-0. I'll have to look that up again. But it was 24-0 or 26-0. Please look that up yourself. And I'll tell you, Alex Stewart could punch. I used to watch him hit the heavy bag in the gym. And he was a bona fide puncher. That fight would be for the WBA and the IBF. And then he would get in there November 6, 1993, with Riddick Big Daddy Bo. Now, Big Daddy Bo used to be Evander Holyfield's sparring partner. And Big Daddy Bo was actually spawned with Evander Holyfield in preparation for the Olympic Games in 1988. Riddick Bowe, he got stopped by Lennox Lewis in the 1988 gold medal rounds. So he wound up getting a silver medal in that 88 Olympic Games. But in 1993, November 6th, he would fight Evander Holyfield. That was one hell of a fight. Fight of the year, as far as I'm concerned. And he would defeat, Riddick Bowe would defeat Evander Holyfield and take his lineal scrap from him. 1994, he would face Michael Moore. And Michael Moore, I tell you, was a very, very good fighter as well. He was a southpaw, light heavyweight, and he won the WBO light heavyweight championship. I believe it was for the IBF strap. And he defeated Evander Holyfield, 12 rounds. 1995, he would face Ray Mercer. So to step back for one moment, in 1992, he would lose to Riddick Bowe, November 13th. He would lose the WBC, the WBA, and the IBF, and the CBZ Lineal Championship of the World. He would lose a 12-round, unbelievable fight. But then he would come back after an Alex Stewart victory in 1993. He would face Riddick Bowe again, November 6th. And this time he had the tutelage under Emanuel Stewart. And he would defeat Riddick Bowe in 12 rounds. Now that was the famous Fan Man incident, when a man in a parachute that came in with a propeller behind that parachute, and he would disturb the event. A lot of people thought that Riddick Bowe, had an opportunity to win because he was getting ready to get knocked out in that particular round, and he had a chance to get himself together, but that didn't help Riddick Bowe at all. Evander Holyfield would be able to defeat him in 12 rounds in 1993 and get his belts back. Now, in 1994, he would face Michael Moore, and he would lose 12 rounds to Michael Moore and lose his belts. 1995, he would face Ray Mercer, Atlantic City, New Jersey. He would defeat him in 10 rounds. That was a fascinating victory because Ray Mercer, I tell you, the whipping he put on Tommy Morrison, REP to him, for that WBO heavyweight strap was unbelievable. Fascinating knockout. Great combination punching. Ray Mercer was in the military. He came out, and he was just a tough, brawling fight. I would like to see him fight Michael Tyson, but that never happened. A lot of fights never happened that we would have loved to have seen. Evander Holyfield, I wanted to see him fight Razor Ruddock. That didn't happen. But it is what it is. I can't take anything from Evander Holyfield. He fought them all. He would fight Bobby Chasd, 1996, May 10th, New York. He would knock him out in 5 rounds. Bobby Chasd used to be a middleweight champion of the world. He went up and became a light heavyweight champion of the world. And he couldn't do anything in the heavyweight division, especially with Evander Holyfield being knocked out in 5 rounds. November 9th, in 1996, he would face Iron Mike Tyson in Las Vegas, Nevada. He would knock him out in 11 rounds. That was a very good combination that he put on Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson, after he lost to Douglas, was never the same fighter, but I always believed that Evander Holyfield would beat him anyway. He was a quick, two-handed fighter, moved from side to side, very tough as nails. He wouldn't give in to Mike Tyson. He used to spar with Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson knew exactly who Evander Holyfield was. And Mike Tyson would use the tactic, and I'll be honest with you. Let a man fight himself out of a fight. Evander Holyfield had a strategy where he would clean up all the heavyweights that Mike Tyson would leave behind, and he would make himself number 1 ranked. And when Mike Tyson lost to Buster Douglas at that particular time, Razor Ruddock was supposed to be fighting Mike Tyson in Edmonton, Canada, but Evander Holyfield was supposed to get that fight first. So instead of him fighting Evander Holyfield, he fought Buster Douglas. Either way, I believe he'd have been knocked out by either fighter. That's just the way I feel about it because Evander Holyfield was that kind of a fighter. Now, in 1997, June 28th, he would fight Mike Tyson again. That was the famous ear-biting incident. And he won on a 3-round foul. Mike Tyson bit his ears. That was for the WBA Heavyweight Championship strap. November 8th of that same year, he would fight Michael Moore. And he would knock out Michael Moore in 8 rounds for the WBA and the IBF Heavyweight Championship strap. Evander Holyfield was something else, I'll tell you. 1998, September 19th, Von Beam, WBA IBF Heavyweight Championship strap. He would defeat him in 12 rounds. 1999, March 13th, he would face Lennox the Lion Lewis for the WBC, WBA, IBF, and then CBZ lineal strap. And that would be a 12-round draw, very controversial. They say that Don King has something to do with that. Hey, what can I tell you? November 13th, they would solve that problem. He would face Lennox Lewis again, and he would lose to Lennox Lewis in 12 rounds for the WBC, WBA, and the IBF, and the IBO strap, as well as the CBZ. Fascinating alphabet soup, I'll tell you. But Evander Holyfield was in that mix. 2000, August 12th, he would fight John Ruiz, Las Vegas. He would defeat him in 12 rounds. They said it was controversy. That was for the WBA Heavyweight Championship of the world. It was such a controversy bout, they got in there and they did it again. 2001, March 3rd, John Ruiz, Heavyweight Championship of the world, so WBA version of that. And this was in Las Vegas. And it was a 12-round draw. Some sources thought that Evander Holyfield might have won. And a lot of people thought that John Ruiz won. So they made it a draw. Simple as that. 2002, we faced Hasim Rahman in Atlantic City. And it would be an 8-round technical on that particular fight. Holyfield would win the fight. December 14th, Chris Bird. Chris Bird was a light heavyweight, moved up to heavyweight in Atlantic City, New Jersey, and he would lose to him in 12 rounds. Chris Bird was a southpaw, real irky-jerky style, moved from side to side, and Holyfield at that time, he just didn't have the legs that he used to have. That was for the IBF Heavyweight Championship of the World. 2003, October 4th, he would face James Lights Out Tony. He would move up from middleweight to light heavyweight to heavyweight, and he would face Evander Holyfield, and he would lose on a technical knockout in 9 rounds. Holyfield just couldn't get up, but they called it a technical loss. This is in Las Vegas, Nevada, and that was an upsetting night. Upsetting night for me because Holyfield never really been knocked out before, not in that fashion. 2004, November 13th, he would face Larry Donald to the NABC Heavyweight Championship of the World. That was New York, and he would lose to him in 12 rounds. 2006, August 18th, Jeremy Bates, Dallas, Texas. He would knock him out in 2 rounds. He would fight for the USBA Heavyweight Championship, the WBO Heavyweight Championship. He would lose to Sudden Abraswis. Let me correct that name. It would be Sultav Abragimov in Moscow, Russia. He lose to him in 12 rounds. That would be for the WBO Heavyweight Championship strap. 2008, December 20th, he would face Nikolov Valuev. That would be in Switzerland. He would lose to him in 12 rounds. That fight was almost 7 foot tall. I can see that happening to Evander Holyfield. Wasn't really a truly heavyweight to begin with. WBA Heavyweight Championship of the World. He would face France Bolter in 2010, April 10th, in Las Vegas, Nevada, and he would win on a technical knockout in 8 rounds. That would be for the WBF Heavyweight Championship of the World. Sherman Williams, December 9th, 2010, Detroit, Michigan. That bout was scheduled, but it was canceled. Now he would finally get it on with Sherman Williams in 2011, January 22nd. And it would be a no contest in 3 rounds. And his last fight was March 7th against Brian Nielsen for the WBF Heavyweight Championship of the World. And he would get a 10-round technical knockout. So Evander Holyfield was a fascinating fighter. Salute to Evander Holyfield. I have him one of the greatest fighters of all time in the entire history of the game. Because of his heart, his ability to make adjustments. He came up from light heavyweight to heavyweight. He unified both divisions. Not only that, he came back 2 or 3 different times and won the heavyweight championship of the world again. But in the amateurs, he fought a guy by the name of Ricky Warmack. And Ricky Warmack was one of the most feared amateurs at that time in those divisions. Evander Holyfield came back 3 times to beat him, to make it to the Olympic Games. And then he took advantage of that, and he was going to win the gold medal, but because of a so-called late punch, they gave him a silver medal. So Evander Holyfield, salute to him. He's one of the greatest fighters of all time in my book. Thanks for watching. This is Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. Just chopping it up with the Scrapbook. Salute to all my subscribers. Peace.